Hey, everybody.
Welcome to Beer and Gear.
Yes, sir.
Glad to be actually face to face this time.
Yes, it's good. We haven't done this since the first episode.
Yeah, and honestly, we don't get to be face to face near as much as I would like to.
Sure,
friend.
Yes.
Well, why don't you tell everybody what we're drinking?
Yes, we have. So I'll try to say it right. Chimay Bleu Grand Reserve.
Bleu.
Yeah, Bleu. Even though it's from Belgium.
Even though it's from Belgium, it's called Bleu.
Bleu. Yeah. So this is a Trappist beer. What that means is it's actually brewed in a monastery.
Yes.
And to qualify as a Trappist beer, it has to either be directly brewed or monitored by the monks.
Mm-hmm.
Brewing cannot be their primary function. They actually still need to be a monk.
Right.
They can use the income from it for the upkeep of the monastery, but the vast majority of the money is actually donated and given away.
So this is like for tax purposes?
I don't know about that. So what it's done for me is it sent me on a spiral going,
yeah.
Well, if they're giving the money away to people in need,
Shouldn't they
should I exclusively be drinking Trappist beer?
I mean, I feel like that's the way to go.
I get the beer that I want to drink.
We're about to find out.
And we're helping people out.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's a win-win.
Win-win. Also, if I'm in need, will they just give me the beer?
That would be nice. Now, what you can do is you can actually, if you go to Belgium, there are a ton of these, and you can actually go up to the Abbey and ring the bell and wait for somebody to come to the gate and let you in.
Yeah.
And you can actually go in and partake there locally. And some of them even produce cheese and other things.
Oh, man.
So
that's so good.
And the ones that do cheese, they'll take the basically the mash or whatever's left and feed that to the cows.
Of course. Yeah.
So it just kind of keeps going.
Now you got beer butter.
Yes, beer butter. There you go. So
oh my gosh.
I was introduced to this by Jason Court, our friend.
Yes.
He had it when he was on a trip in Boston.
Okay.
And so he had recommended it, so we're giving it a go.
All right, let's find out what we're in for here.
This is a first.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That's not bad at all.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
It's I'd call it a brown ale.
Yeah, brown ale.
But that is not bad at all.
There's some
residual floating in there.
There's some floating.
That makes me think of going and getting a Guinness actually on tap in England.
Oh, wow. No, I haven't done that.
You get some of that residual.
When were you in England?
Well, I've never been.
Oh, okay.
I wish. I mean, I speak like I've been there, but I always hear all the stories of going and getting it on tap in the pub, and you see all of the little sediment residual that's in it.
Man, that's really good. That tastes great. Thank you, man. That's a treasure right there.
Yeah, thank you, World Market.
Well done.
Only place around that has it.
And do they just have the bleu? Or
they have the red, which is the premier.
Okay.
And then they have the little gift pack, if you will.
Okay.
It comes with an official Chimay goblet.
A goblet?
A goblet, yes.
Okay, well, if the monks are drinking out of a goblet.
Yeah, we need a goblet.
And we need a goblet.
And so then it comes with all 4 beers that they produce.
Okay.
This was originally a Christmas beer.
Okay.
And people liked it so much they just had to keep making it.
Yeah. That's a little bit weird that the blue one is the Christmas beer. It feels like it should be the green one or the red one.
Yes.
Come on, guys.
Yep. So you've got the red in there. You've got, is it the green or the gold? Let me see.
What is this? Johnny Walker?
There we go. So you've got the gold, and the gold, if I remember correctly, is the actual house beer, if you will, for these monks. That's what they actually drink. It's more of a golden beer, around 5%, where this is 9%.
Oh my.
Yes, and then the other, where is it at? So I can try to pronounce it. Yes, Sink Sense, which is 150. That is a specialty one that they do. That one's 8%.
What do you mean 150?
Well, that's what the Sink Scent means. Is 150.
It means 150.
Means 150.
Okay.
So
I was like, if it's $150, I'm not drinking that beer.
No, so that one was brewed in 1966. The premier, do they indicate here? They don't. I think that's the one that goes back to the beginning, along with, the Grand Reserve was in 1948. So, but you get all four of those plus the little Chimay chalice. So these are actually in smaller bottles.
Oh, okay.
So the bottle fits perfectly in the chalice.
The chalice needs...
Or the goblet, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, chalice is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Makes me think of Indiana Jones. So there you can see the picture.
Not too shabby.
Yeah. So they actually have that, not that cheap though, but they have that set there. I saw it. $31 get you the 4 beers plus your goblet / chalice.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't sound... 4 beers?
4 beers plus the cup. That's
a lot for 4 beers, but glass is also really expensive now.
Correct. So this was $19.99.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad for 750 milliliter. Looks like a wine bottle.
Mm-hmm.
The reserve was $17.99, same size, $7.50.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah, we may be. This is my number one reason to become a monk. All of a sudden.
Yes, I went to brew beer.
I'm in for making the beer and drinking the beer. And if we can get some bread and cheese involved with that, I am set.
Absolutely.
Maybe some sausage.
Yeah, so I actually have a couple other Trappist beers at home that I'm going to partake in.
Try them out?
Yes, and we'll see how those go. Those may be on future shows.
Is Francis Connor a Trappist? Because it's got the monk on the label. It may have started that way and maybe it's not anymore. I don't know, but like
that I can't speak to.
I would be interested to know. If anybody knows, you can just tell us while you're just scream at the podcast while you're listening to it.
Yes.
I found that's the best way to converse with other podcasters.
Send us a boost. You can give us a message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I have Orval at home. I have the Rochefort 10, and then I have I'm probably butchering some of these names, the Westmel Tripel. That's what I have.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how those go.
Not too shabby. You're going to try them out and tell me how you like them. But
yes.
This Chimay is fantastic, so.
It's good. I do have
recommend.
Let me pull this up real quick. I do have a PSA for people on beer.
A PSA?
A PSA, yes.
It's going to be great.
Where's that at?
Is that the PSA noise?
Yes, the official PSA noise of the podcast. Here we go. So in the vein of your bad experience in the last show, I tried what was the one that I thought Drake had recommended to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's Samuel Smith's Organic Chocolate Stout. And it was like, okay, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It wasn't like they brewed chocolate into the beer.
No.
It was literally chocolate flavored beer.
Yeah, that's not good.
It was horrible.
And again, like I've had stouts that tasted like you could like catch a hint of
Correct.
chocolate. It's like there's this aftertaste. It's like, oh, that's chocolate.
Yes.
The like very forward chocolate taste with beer. It's like, what is happening right now?
Yes. So this literally tastes like they poured milk chocolate directly into the beer.
Oh man, that's not good.
And the aftertaste was just rough.
Yeah.
So my PSA, my warning, don't do it.
Don't do it.
The one that he actually recommended is the Nut Brown Ale. So I will have to try to track that one down and try it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, that nutty flavor, that's not too bad.
Not too bad at all.
You can get away with more of that, I feel like, in beer than you can chocolate. Like,
Yeah, not good. Don't do it.
Don't do it. All right. So jumping back into compression,
Yes.
some of these, it's like we're going to talk about compression. We're going to talk about EQ. We're going to talk about limiting. We're going to talk about normalization. I feel like there was another one somewhere in the middle of that I can't remember, but this is this concept of how do I make, I think we mentioned earlier the general rule of any sound reinforcement system, or when you're recording somebody, is you want that person to sound like themselves, or you want that instrument to sound like itself.
Yeah.
Now you get a little bit of away from that in some of the newer versions of things, like when sometimes new sound, whatever, when you talk about synthesis, when you talk about trying to synthesize a sound, when you talk about electric guitars, in any kind of distorted or I don't know even what I'm trying to say here. There are sounds that you are trying to warp them in order to make a certain sound, but that's kind of the point of those, is that you are still usually musically.
You're thinking of overdrive?
Like overdrive, fuzz, even, hard like wah or reverb or some of the spacey reverbs and stuff like that. You're trying to introduce, you're trying to what's the word? You're trying to manipulate the sound in such a way that makes it, I would hope, more musical. I mean, that you're trying to, create a feel. I love that about like overdrives and stuff like that, is that like crunchiness. The reason that came about is, you had these guitars, and originally they were all acoustic guitars. And then they're like, how do I compete with a band while I'm playing a guitar that, only has enough sound for really me and the person sitting in front of me to hear it? Well, let's plug it in. Let's put this, pickup inside of it, this or microphone in front of it or something like that. They tried a bunch of different ways of doing it with transducers and all these different things. And so they come up with this, well, I'm going to put it on this or coming out of this speaker for itself. Like the whole band isn't coming through speakers. They're just playing their brass and, woodwind, and it's louder. And it kind of cuts through everything. And the guitar is chunking back here, but it's not as big as a piano to be able to really push sound, or even the bass guitars, the basses that they used to use, those stand-up basses. That's a huge, that's a furniture, a piece of furniture that's emanating this sound, and you really need that for that low end. But guitars, they were trying to push them with these speakers. And originally, they tried to get these big speakers that would push that sound really with, I guess, closer fidelity to what they were hearing. And then this thing happens where they get a smaller speaker and they push it harder than they should. And what you hear is this distortion in the sound. You start to hear this beginnings of the electric guitar, like crunch, the electric guitar rasp, whatever sound you want to, equate that to. But it's the first distortion, and it's called overdrive because you are overdriving the speaker. You are trying to push it harder than it should. And you've all heard this when a speaker blows, or I don't know if you have or not, but when a speaker blows, you hear distortion all the time because the speaker is not reproducing the sound the way that it's supposed to. But before that happens, there's this sound that's introduced to the original sound that makes it sound a certain way. So all the way down that path to talk about yes, there are some ways that we're not trying to produce the original sound. We're trying to force it to sound different in one way or another. But for the huge majority of things, and especially when it comes to speaking and most singing and stuff like that. You're trying to be as true to the sound as you can. Now, how do you have that fidelity of sound when you got all these different sources and you're trying to hear certain things inside? You're trying to make the I meant to say this on the first show. It's like when you're watching something on an actual stage, and you're like, what am I supposed to be looking at? And then somebody shines a spotlight on the person that you're supposed to be looking at. There's light all around the stage, but there's a person who is obviously the center of attention, and
Yes.
they usually shine a spotlight on that person so that you can. And that's kind of what compression does audio-wise.
Take a brief pause.
But you're trying to come up with a way to now I have lost it.
Audiologically.
Yeah, but what audiologically?
You just referenced being on stage in the
Spotlight. So in the same way that you would shine a spotlight on a stage to show, then you're going to shine a spotlight on the sound with compression.
Yes.
All right, here's where we can start. So you've got this idea that you have all of these different things to look at or hear, and there's certain things that you want to pay closer attention to. Now, if you really want, I'm trying to think of like in a photo, you really want to pull a subject out of a photo, right? So one of the things that photographers
There you go.
photographers will do is use a long lens, something with a long focal length or whatever that's called. They're going to use a long lens, and they're going to use a really fast lens or a fast aperture, and they're going to try to get separation between the background of the image and the foreground. So they're going to bring into focus the what the subject of the image, and they are going to let everything else kind of fuzz.
Yes.
And so that's kind of the idea inside of compression. That's kind of the idea inside of EQ as well. So compression and EQ work hand in hand. Compression works across the entire band of frequency range of the sound that you're replicating. EQs are specific. EQs you may have seen or you have seen probably on a pretty old. I mean, they're all old now, but like the analog mixers that we used to have would have generally a 3-band EQ on them.
Yes.
You would have a high range or a high EQ. You would have a middle, and you would have a low. And basically, if you take the spectrum of the whole spectrum of what you're hearing, which is somewhere in the range. I mean, I think they go lower. The EQs usually are like 0 to like 25 or something like that. Your ear's really only hearing 20 to 20 if you've got good hearing.
Yep.
Normal hearing, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Sorry. So you take that entire range, and if you split it into thirds, you got that low end, you got the middle end, the middle,
Yeah.
and you've got the high end. And so what those knobs would do is you can increase the volume of each of those sections.
Yep.
Now, if you add in to the middle range, usually is where they would start adding this, they would add a sweep knob. And what that does is it allows you to more dial in where in that middle range you're adjusting the volume.
That makes sense.
all the way up to like, each, you've got some of these big old EQs that have a massive number, I don't know, 20 band EQ that has 20 different sections, 20 different frequencies that you are either pushing the volume on or pulling it back. Now, why is this important? Again, you are taking the signal that's being sent to you, and you're trying to make it clearer. Because what we're hearing in our headphones, through the microphone, all of these, through the preamp, through the, all of this different processing that's going on is a manipulated sound. And if you need to get it back to zero, what it sounds like when I'm just talking to you in front of me, or even better than that, if I can make it a little more clearer, if I can make it a little more clear, I'm manipulating the EQ in order to bring certain ranges down. Now you can hear, like when I say certains, there's a sharpness to those, what are aspirations or
sibilants.
Sibilants is the other word for it. You can really hear it.
I got it right that time.
Sibilants.
Yes.
And you can hear, like as I'm really hissing into that into this microphone, almost whistling into the microphone, you can hear like that sharpness inside of it. Well, that's unpleasant for a long period of time.
Yes.
To keep hearing that over and over and over again. So what you would do is you would find that frequency on the high end of your spectrum, and you would locate that and you would bring it down just a little bit. Because that's a little too sharp.
Yes.
So some of that is just, when someone talks into a microphone, you're judging how far away you should be from the microphone based on what you're hearing in your ears. But say they're not listening, they're just talking. That's all the audio engineer is doing, is listening to it and trying to make it sound better.
Yep.
The other side of that spectrum, the low end, and a lot of times radio broadcasters really like to have that low end.
Yeah, get up there.
The ladies, man.
Yes.
But that, if you get closer to the microphone, you're going to hear some of that on a lot of mics. There's, I think, this RE320 that we have over here next to us. It doesn't have as much of that proximity effect, but that is something to play with. Well, then also on the EQ, you can decide whether or not that low end is going to be present or not. Well, just like on the high end, you want some of that. You want some of that high end, some of that brilliance or clarity is sometimes what it's called. I mean, there's different words, and it's so funny. Like all of these words have nothing to do with sound, but they like muddy.
Yeah, I've heard it referred to as crisp.
Crisp. It's almost like you can take the sound and break it like a cracker.
Yes.
So that sound, like, it's really nice because it really helps you understand the beginning and the end of a sound.
Yes.
That crispness helps there to be separation.
Yes.
Between things. On the low end, you can see that it's kind of flubby and feels
muddy,
round, and bouncy. And I mean, bouncy may not be the right word for it, but like real flowy and like there isn't a separation because it kind of goes in and out.
Yes.
But it helps with gravity, and it helps with that like this is a thing.
Gravitas.
I almost feel like I could hold this sound in my hands, type thing.
Yeah.
But the problem with the bottom end is a lot of lower plosives, like that. Actually, I've got a lot of it cut out, so you can't even really, like, that's not that if I didn't have this EQ'd right, then that would sound horrible what I just did into the microphone. But that same like low end can be really hard to listen to as well. So you've got to find those in equalization. What you're doing is finding those bands of sound, and you're tweaking them each individually and saying, I need this a little bit up and I need this a little bit down. Now, we've all been the guy in the, well, I don't know, this doesn't seem to be a thing anymore, but you remember the old the old days with the old cassette players.
Yeah.
A lot of them would have the EQ kind of in the middle. And it was like a 5-band.
Yeah, it was.
4 or 5 band. And you would make the little smile. Ooh, almost knocked over my beer. You would make the little smiley face.
Yes, you would.
Where you would raise the low end a little bit to get that thump. And then you would raise the high end a little bit to get that presence. And then you would push down on the middle. So it'd be like this smiley face.
Yep.
Right? And what you're doing is a mid cut,
Yes.
which is pretty normal actually, because our ears hear mid range really well. That's the last part of your range to go in your hearing is you'll lose some of the low end, you'll lose a lot of the high end, especially if you have earwax buildup. So watch out for that.
Yes.
But that mid range kind of stays there, and that makes it really muddy. What happens when it's really muddy? The sound is really muddy. Is you have you don't hear definition, and you actually lose a lot of the volume as well. So it just sounds like, I mean, like you're not hearing anything very well. So because that's part of our ears that we can actually hear really well in, it makes it hard to understand if that's all you're hearing.
Correct.
So what's the difference then? The difference between like limiting and compression and EQ is that EQ is taking individual sections of the sound and making them higher or lower. EQ and limiting, those are taking the entire band and saying this needs to be less dynamic, or this just needs to be capped. In the case of limiting, this needs to be capped, and we don't need to go as loud as this was before. In either case, they're limiting the dynamic range of the entire band of sound.
Correct. Yes.
That was a lot.
Yes.
Do you have any questions? I feel like this is my
Sure.
my way of taking a breath.
So tell us what the actual difference is between what compression is doing and what normalization is doing, because there are actually two different things. And then a second question would be, should I normalize first, or should I compress first, or do I even need normalization at all?
That's good. I would say, okay, so first the difference between the two. Normalization, audio normalization is when you bring you bring the gain of the entire sound. Again, this is the entire spectrum. This is an EQ. The entire spectrum, you're bringing the entire the gain of and by gain I mean like raw volume of the entire sound up to or down to the level that you want it to be. Now you got to be careful with normalization, because you're not taking it's not compression. Correct. Normalization is taking like the amplitude of the entire recording to a level that you have said, this is what I want it to be. Now, we were talking about this before, so I already have this ready. There's a thing called there's a unit of measurement. We've talked about decibels already. Mm-hmm. There's a unit of measurement that is a perceived loudness measurement, and that's called LUFS. And usually, like if you're putting a podcast out, you're aiming for around -20 to -16 LUFS. And again, now that's a perceived sound, but it's a loudness measurement that you really want to ensure that is the that's going to put you in the same range as everybody else, I guess. But you can tell, like, and I would say, like, on in decibels, like we're talking about like 0 and just below. Unity and just below is probably the area that which you would want to be in. I would say would probably say -5 to 0. Now, this is a little bit weird, because every 3 decibel change is like is like a doubling the volume. So that's not a small like range.
Correct.
It sounds like a small range because you can talk about going all the way to negative infinity, which is nothing, up to, you know, plus 20. That's a huge range of decibels. But every time you increase the decibels by about 3 dB, you're doubling the sound. When you step, if you've got a speaker that's 50 feet away from you, when you step up to 25 feet from it, you're going to be about 3 dB
louder. Yeah.
louder.
Yep.
So that's a little bit strange. It's not. I wouldn't say that that's like that makes sense to our brains. When you're talking about normalization, you're trying to take the overall sound and bring it to a certain level. Now, the reason that I would do compression before normalization is because compression is going to make things sound louder. Compression is going to, and again, this is kind of in that perceived range. When you compress a sound, you're not actually making the high end, the amplitude of your loudest range, or your loudest peak or anything like. You're not making that louder necessarily. You are bringing the high end and the highest part and the lowest part closer together.
Correct.
And when you do that, everything sounds louder. Yep. Because again, you if we're just out in, you know, the middle of, you know, the woods, or I'm trying to think. Let's go to the city in our minds, right? You're in the city and you're hearing cars, you know, drive by you. You may be hearing a jackhammer or some sort of construction sound or some beeping of like a trash truck backing up or whatever. Your brain is still able to hear the person standing next to you talking in the midst of all of that different sound. And your brain is making sense of that. Compression is helping to make sense of the thing that you are supposed to be hearing in a mix. It's helping to bring that into an area that you can really hear the difference between the highs and the lows. And so, if you bring that spotlight onto the sound, and then you normalize it, then you push it to you're not only pushing the high end anymore to where you want it to be, you're also bringing up the low end.
Correct.
So a lot of compressors will actually have this. They'll have like an output gain or something like that, where they will say like, you want compression, but then you want it to be pushed a little bit harder after it's been compressed. And so that type of gain on the back end does help with that. But normalization is different than compression in that way.
How it's manipulating the sound.
How it's manipulating the sound. It's not. Normalization is almost like I would put it at the very end of everything. Like you want to limit, and I would put limiting. Man, that's okay. So compression and EQ, let's talk about that real quick when it comes to like order of things. If you are trying to get like a warmer sound, then you should, if you're trying to get like a warmer sound, then you would EQ first. Is that right? Yeah. If you're trying to get like a warmer sound, then I would EQ first and then compress. And then if you want to get like super clear, clean sound, then I would compress and then EQ. Yeah, that's I'm trying to get it right in my head because it's one of those like it's really easy to say this the wrong way. So there's a reason to do each one of those, I think, first. But again, that has to do with, are you trying to get like you get the sound the way that you want it, and then you compress everything? Or do you compress everything and then manipulate the way that it sounds? And you can really, if you if you compress everything first and then manipulate the way that it sounds, you can really bring out more of a difference between like certain areas of the sound. And then I would actually probably limit, unless you really want like if there's like a distorted, like gritty sound that you're going after, I would limit before those.
Okay.
You can limit at the very end if you want you want some of that breakup or some of that gravelly sound inside of it that makes it sounds real. I would say when things kind of distort a little bit, when you hear somebody's voice start to get a little raspy, that sounds more real than like the angel clarity thing that's going on.
Sure.
So again, there's a lot of taste involved with this, but then if you do all of that, if you shape that sound and then you make it, and then you limit it or limit it and then normalize it, like you're taking all of that overall processing after the fact. Man, that was a lot.
Yeah. See, I would have thought
So tired.
EQ first to get the frequencies where you want, then compress.
And
I would have just thought that would have just been the natural order.
Yeah.
Because I want to manipulate the real sound of what I'm hearing. So like you talked about, if you want to get those S's out, pull those S's out.
Yeah.
If you've got somebody that's got a ton of low, then high pass filter, right? Bass roll off.
Yeah.
So you would essentially
high pass filter allows the high that you got to. There's low cut and high pass. Same thing. The high pass is letting the highs pass through.
Yes.
The low cut is cutting the lows out.
Yeah.
Same thing with high cut and low pass.
Correct. So if you had somebody with a really bassy voice, you want to start rolling away some of those lower frequencies to remove some of that muddiness. And then once you had that, then I would have thought, okay, now let's compress to get the highest and the lows together. But you just gave examples there of why you would compress first and then do the EQ.
Yeah, I would say it's which one, this may not be the right way to say it, so please forgive me. But I would say which one of these do you want to hear the biggest change from? That's the one that I'm going to put actually second.
Okay.
Because if you use the EQ first and then you compress everything, you're actually taking away some of the work that you just did in that. And that's where I would say it makes it warmer, because it brings that compression is then bringing everything closer together. The difference between everything is getting squished. And so you have this, again, because our ears naturally hear that mid-range better. If you compress everything after you've already EQ'd it, then you are naturally going to hear that mid-range a little bit louder than if you had left it without compression.
Fair enough.
Whereas if you compress it first, you bring everything close together, and then you EQ it and say, like, I'm going to spike here a little bit to really get some clarity. I mean, you could compress everything and then you could boost the mid-range, and then it would just sound terrible. But it would be like super warm, I guess, but all you're going to hear is mud at that point. Or you could boost the low end harder afterwards, or but most of the time when people are going to compress first and then EQ, they're really looking to dial in that clarity. They're trying to like push those areas outside of the rest of the range. And again, to use the spotlight idea, really let your brain focus on those peak areas that they're pushing, or parts that aren't being cut. I don't remember if we talked about when you are EQing as well. The general rule is to cut narrow and then gain wide. Now, I don't actually know all of the reason why that's the case. But when I say narrow and wide, I'm talking about the span of frequencies that you are cutting or gaining. So that's usually called Q. I'm trying to think if there's another word for it that I've seen. I'm sure that there is. But the Q of an EQ is how wide like if you picture that smiley face, like how wide is that dip?
Yep.
You can make it super narrow, like where it's only a few frequencies, or you can make it really wide. Now, the danger of cutting really wide is you cut out a lot of things that you don't want to cut. I know that.
Correct.
I don't fully understand why when you boost, you want to boost wide. I think it's probably because it's more forgiving, and generally makes it sound more natural, because you don't usually see like those huge, like when your ear hears something a certain range like spike, that's usually like when you're like, ow, I don't like that. So that's probably the reason, but I can't say that for sure. Again, we're all learning this as we go, right?
Yep.
But the other part of it that I would say as a general rule when EQing is to cut before you boost. And that has to do more with, you want to actually show people again naturally what is actually there, as opposed to adding something. Boosting is adding frequency amplitude to something that's not actually there. So cut first, then boost. Cut narrow and boost wide. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot. That's a lot of I guess, and this is really the work that I would say most sound engineers are there's an element of this being super basic, what we're talking about, and there's an element of it's so foundational. Like you have to be able to hear and then do this, if you want to be able to have a sound that people are going to want to listen to. But it's also, as we talked about before at the very beginning, manipulating that sound and making it sound different is also one of the things. It's like Picasso. Nobody looks at Picasso and is like, you know what? I bet that the dude he was drawing had a nose on the side of his head.
Yeah.
Or two eyes that were, nobody looks at that and goes, yeah, that's exactly what that sounded like. That's a lot with sound. If somebody is manipulating the sound, if somebody is really pushing or driving or making there be distortion or doing this, they're trying to evoke some sort of feeling inside of it. And like I always laugh when I talk to Chad, our friend Chad. He really likes, like when he listens to music by himself, he wants the volume all the way up to where it's like hurting his jaw. Like he wants to feel it.
Yep.
And like you think about the ways that people like to listen to music, whether it's really loud or really soft or really warm or really like sharp, or, I really like rock music because of that distortion. And, usually those are the angry people, right?
Are you saying I'm angry?
I'm not saying you're angry. I'm saying you've got some repressed feelings over there.
Yeah.
But it's that, like, you kind of hear inside of the music that people are listening to those, you understand, I think, pretty naturally what that music is trying to convey.
Yes.
And sometimes people do it against itself in order to make a point. And some people, most of the time, people are doing it like with that, what that sound means, in order to encourage that point, in order to make that more pointed, I guess.
Yep.
Anyway, there's a lot.
It is. It's good stuff, though.
You got any other questions?
No, I think we kind of covered a lot more in depth in what those pieces are. And in the last show, we kind of talked about what the compressor is actually, the various functions that it's doing, how it's compressing at the ratio, the threshold that it would have to hit in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There is some of the makeup gain in there as well. I think we hit that pretty good. I guess the biggest thing that I'm hearing is I've got some adjustments that I need to make when I'm producing the audio of the show. Because it sounds like I'm doing some things in reverse order.
Well, not necessarily.
So I should
You're pretty warm.
Try tweaking it.
It's one of those things that you got to be, you got to know. I guess the other part is to know your signal path.
Sure.
Know where these tools lie inside of your signal path. So on a soundboard, it is mostly for a soundboard, it is decided for you what's going to come first. You have gain at the very top of that.
Yep.
And then EQ is going to be actually further down the list, and compression is going to be higher up on the list, or higher up on the more primary in the chain. I say higher up because that's the way that the soundboard works. So please forgive me. But from top to bottom, you're like, you've got gain and you've got compression and you've got EQ. And sometimes if you've got some flip inside of that, if you're able to change those, that's one of the things that you want to know why you're doing that. I guess is the best way that I can do it.
Yep.
Really small book by Nathan Nyquist that I would recommend to everybody is just the EQ and compression formula. I've got a copy of this that you can take with you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
But I would recommend it to anybody that's just wanting to understand all of this better. It's a really small book. It doesn't take long to read, and I think he breaks down everything really well. He's got like that's part of a whole series of books that he's written that I think do a great job of explaining, what compression, bus compression is, and mastering, and I don't remember what all the other books are in that series. But
he's got the 3 delay framework.
Delay, yeah.
The bus compression framework.
Mm-hmm.
3-space reverb framework,
mm-hmm.
mastering multi-band compression, and then the EQ and compression formula.
Yeah. And so I would say definitely read the EQ and compression formula if you want to get further into some of these other ones. I think he does a good job, I would say. Other books that I've read that have been really helpful. Yamaha has an old book that it was actually the first sound book that I read was the Sound Reinforcement Handbook, which is awesome, but that's produced by Yamaha. There was another one, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. But there's a lot of good books out there, and it's kind of funny to be recommending almost like a textbook to somebody, but that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yes.
So
I guess one other question.
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
So you were guy I know.
Yeah, there's this guy I know who doesn't know audio.
He's got a weird spot on his arm.
Yeah. You're talking about the LUFs.
Mm-hmm.
So the Rodecaster gives you the ability to pick that when you're exporting your show or your recording.
Right.
Would you recommend hitting that in that frequency and then bringing it in and doing EQ compression? Or do you think leave it alone, let it export as is, then manipulate the EQ and the compression and the other pieces?
Yeah. What I would say is if you don't feel confident with so the Rodecaster, when it's giving you that normalization option when you're at the end, it is assuming that you've already done all the EQing on each individual channel, all the compression that you want.
Okay.
It's assuming, and that's one of the great things I would say about the Rodecaster is that it gives you so much, the ability to dial in so much before you even record. And that's I think that's a really cool thing that they've done with this product. They're saying at the end of that, if you just want to like take it off of this and immediately drop it into your podcast, you can set the LUFs right now.
Okay.
I would not set the LUF or normalize it. I would not normalize it and then go back and EQ everything. Okay. I think that you lose. It's like I will equate this again, to use a photography analogy. I would equate this to doing like trying to, if you take, instead of taking the raw image from a digital camera,
yep,
and then EQ, or not EQing it, but doing all of your color grading and all of that stuff, all of that stuff afterward. This would be more like taking a JPEG out of the camera and then trying to do it. It's not that you can't do anything with a JPEG. It's not like you couldn't manipulate a JPEG to look a different way after you have, exported it. But there's a level of compression that's happening inside of that image to make it a smaller file size that you lose some of the ability to do that more dialed in version of editing after you've already done normalization. So I would wait on normalization again until the end of the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, my friend has at least been doing that part right.
I love it.
Yes.
Did I just snort? I think I snorted. Yeah.
That's okay.
Man, this beer was good. Thank you, Kris.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Well, I guess if that's all we've got, then we do have a Boostagram.
Ooh, Boostagram.
Yeah, we do. Boostagram. Again, from our friend Jason.
Jason.
Yes. The original was a row of ducks.
Okay.
2222.
2222.
Yes, row of ducks. Numerology. So he I forget which episode I guess it was from And We're Back.
Okay.
And he gave me a little feedback on that jingle. I guess it hit a little bit harder than I expected.
Oh, gosh.
So I was going for shock and awe, if you will.
Did it knock him out of his seat?
Yeah, he wasn't quite prepared for it.
Nice.
So I guess we had mentioned some. Oh, yeah, because I gave the lead in to like, hey, people that I work with, I'm going to be sharing some stuff. I'm not talking about you. You're all good people.
Right.
Don't be offended. So his comment was, I'm offended, but only because you asked me to be. T-foul.
Only because you asked me not to be?
I'm sorry. Yeah, he says to be, but no, he has it right. Not to be. I misread it. So that was funny.
Nice.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, man. You're at least the one person for sure that we know that's listening.
Yeah, right? Everybody else is a bot. Until you Boostagram us, I'm just assuming you're a bot.
Yeah, boost or it didn't happen.
I like it.
So a couple other quick things to throw out. This is kind of a big deal, if you will.
Yeah.
For us, this is episode number 10.
Episode 10.
We made it to the double digits.
Yeah.
There are a ton of podcasts out there that have one, maybe three. And if you go out to podcastindex.org and start poking around at some of those, those single episodes are somebody going, poop, fart, fizzle. That's all it is. It's like 3 minutes of them just saying stuff and giggling.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Yeah, that's not a podcast. But to kind of put some perspective there, they do have 4,093,000 different podcasts in the index. That's a lot of shows.
A lot of different poop shows.
Yes. So, but with that, just to kind of put some perspective, in the last 90 days, 449,000 of those are the ones that have actually posted a new show.
Mm.
So we've had 2 or 3 in that range.
Yeah.
So that puts us in some fairly rarefied air as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I like it.
We're in there with the big guys. So not bad.
Posting stuff.
That's right.
Posting stuff.
That's right. And we also passed our major 300th download.
300th
300,
download.
baby. Whoa.
Wah, wah, wah.
There you go. But we still need an Aussie. There's got to be an Aussie out there
Yeah,
somewhere. That's the only continent we don't have that they track.
We really would like for one of you,
Yes.
or maybe a Kiwi, just somebody.
I'd take it. That's close enough.
Somebody over there, just download. One download.
Just one. That's all we need.
Just listen to, like 10 minutes. It's fine.
You don't even have to listen. Just download. I just need the download.
I just need the download. I'm trying to complete my bingo.
Yeah,
here.
I'm trying to complete the set.
Yeah.
Give me a download, and we've got every continent.
I love it.
So there's just some fun stuff that's out there. So I think it was a good show.
Yeah, always good to hang out with you, brother, and thanks for bringing
Absolutely,
the beer.
yes. Yeah. We'll have to try some more of the Chimay.
Yeah, man. That was really good.
Yes.
I'm going to remember that.
Maybe next time we'll get the reserve.
Yeah.
Give that a go, and then I'll see how some of these other Trappist beers that I have
Taste,
and potentially bring some of those back for the show.
I'm all about it. Let's try them out.
So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We appreciate you.
Yep. Hey, everybody. Beer and Gear is a value for value podcast. If you made it this far, then I would like to think you found some value from the show. If so, send us a boost with your modern podcast app like Fountain or Podfins. You can find modern podcast apps for Apple and Android at modernpodcastapps.com. When you send a boost, make sure to include a note that we can read on the show.
We just need cash. I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash.